Tracy McGrady, one of the greatest scorers ever. A man who in his prime averaged 32 points for an entire season, dropped 62 on the Wizards, and once only needed 33 seconds to score 13 points and change NBA history.
Bowen is all over McGrady. Foul is picked up. McGrady over Bowen for three. McGrady for the win. Yeah! 1.7 to go.
Coming into the league at 18 years old, Tracy McGrady was undoubtedly one of the most talented and hyped high school prospects of his entire generation. And yet, 8 teams passed on him. How is that possible? Well, to this day, the 1997 draft class is remembered as one of the most chaotic draft classes in NBA history. You had multiple teams tanking for the chance to land the greatest power forward ever. The Celtics, who had 2 lottery picks and still walked away with nothing, and a mixed bag of players. Some who were amazing, then fizzled out. Others who never lived up to the promise like they showed in college. And a few like Chauncey Billups, who played with 5 different teams before he turned into a perennial All-Star and Hall of Famer. This is the story of the 1997 draft class and what happened to the 8 players drafted before and after Tracy McGrady. But first, let's give a little context going into the draft. In the mid-90s, NBA teams were deeply skeptical of drafting high school players. It had been nearly 2 decades since a high schooler went straight to the league. So, it was a huge deal in 1995 when Kevin Garnett made the leap. KG was a 6'11" forward drafted 5th overall by the Minnesota Timberwolves, and though he wound up becoming the star you know and love today, his early numbers were nothing to write home about, averaging just 10 points and 6 rebounds his rookie year. In the following season, in 1996, 17-year-old Kobe Bryant entered the draft.
Hornets select Kobe Bryant from Lower Merion High School.
And Jerry West was stunned by his skill, talent, and mindset.
To watch him work out, it was like ridiculous, okay? I mean, he's like a man playing against kindergarten people.
But still, Kobe Bryant slipped all the way to the 13th pick. He also had a slow start to his NBA career, averaging just 15 minutes per game during his rookie season. So, to most GMs and NBA front offices, drafting high schoolers was a high-risk, long-term gamble, making a guy like Tracy McGrady appear like a potentially dangerous pick for their franchise, despite the fact that he was 6'9" with a silky smooth jump shot and dunks like these. With hindsight, it's clear that many of these teams made a huge mistake by passing on T-Mac, especially the franchise that passed on him twice. But the team with the first overall pick, they didn't make a mistake at all. In fact, they hit the jackpot.
The San Antonio Spurs select Tim Duncan from Wake Forest University.
The first pick in the 1997 draft belonged to a team that didn't have much of a winning history, the San Antonio Spurs. Coming off an injury-riddled season, the Spurs had a unique chance to pair a young star with a franchise cornerstone. And lucky for them, there was one player in the draft who fit the bill perfectly.
Tim Duncan from Wake Forest University.
Tim Duncan, the big man out of Wake Forest, was without a doubt the top prospect in the draft. He was a 2-time All-American with a 7'5" wingspan, who had just managed to sweep every Player of the Year award in college basketball. With Tim Duncan and David Robinson, the Spurs were confident they'd have one of the best frontcourts in the entire NBA landscape. But what they didn't know was that by drafting Duncan, they just selected the best player in the history of their franchise. Right out of the gate, Duncan's defense made the Spurs one of the best teams in the league, averaging 2.5 blocks and nearly 11 rebounds per game. Enough to help Timmy D finish 5th overall in Defensive Player of the Year just as a rookie, helping him to be the first rookie center to make an All-Star appearance since Shaquille O'Neal.
O'Neal over Gettinger.
In fact, no rookie since Larry Bird had made All-NBA first team, and Duncan managed to achieve that goal not just his first year, but the next 12 seasons, making all defense of each of those years as well. Believe it or not, with Duncan, the Spurs went on to make the playoffs for 22 straight years. And over those 22 years, Timmy D battled some of the game's most legendary teams, like the Thunder back when they had 3 MVPs.
Now has a mismatch with Jackson. And gets the roll with 19.
Or the Heatles when Duncan was already 38 years old.
Duncan across the lane. Knight, Diao, what a pass to Duncan.
Across the league, Tim Duncan became known as the Big Fundamental, a silent killer who took down his rivals with just a stare.
Oh, I remember like backpedaling down court and Timmy looked up at me. He just looked at me and didn't say anything. He just looked at me.
And over the course of his career, he won 5 NBA titles, taking home 3 Finals MVPs. Duncan is not only viewed as the greatest Spur of all time, but also arguably the greatest power forward to ever play the game.
You better than Duncan?
No, Tim Duncan's the greatest power forward ever.
Tim Duncan was a 15-time All-Star, 2-time MVP, and by the end of his career, a first-ballot admission to the Basketball Hall of Fame. So, with all of that said, it's easy to see why the Spurs chose to draft Duncan over Tracy McGrady. But did you know they almost wound up becoming teammates at one point?
Very close, Bruce says, to signing Duncan in the summer of 2000 when T-Mac and Grant Hill both joined the team. Bruce said that Magic head coach Doc Rivers denied Tim's request during the negotiations that his family could join the team plane on some flights to games, and that is when Rivers lost Tim Duncan.
Anyway, on to the second pick.
With the second pick in the 1997 NBA draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Keith Van Horn from the University of Utah.
With the second pick in the 1997 draft, the Philadelphia 76ers selected Utah legend Keith Van Horn. Keith was a 6'10" sharpshooting wing who was named first-team All-Conference all 4 years of college, making him the natural choice for the second overall pick. But there was one small hiccup. During his pre-draft interview, Van Horn told the Sixers he didn't want to play for the team, citing the team's losing record and implying a lack of offensive fit with their offensive juggernaut Allen Iverson. Because of this, Van Horn refused to work out for the team and suggested they move on from their pick, which is exactly what they did on the night of the draft, sending Van Horn to the New Jersey Nets. And with the Nets, Van Horn averaged an impressive 19 points on 37 minutes per game his rookie season, enough to lead the team in scoring and helping him finish second overall for Rookie of the Year. At the time, Keith Van Horn played like a modern stretch 4 before it was really a thing. He could space the floor with his jumper, post up smaller defenders, and attack closeouts off the dribble. But unfortunately, after an impressive sophomore season where he averaged nearly 22 points and 9 rebounds, Van Horn's scoring averages began to dip and his role on the team was reduced. At first, it was in part because of his backcourt teammate, the legendary scorer Stephon Marbury. But in the year 2000, his role reduced more with the additions of the Nets' #1 overall pick, Kenyon Martin.
The New Jersey Nets select Kenyon Martin from the University of Cincinnati.
A powerful rim-running dunker and an intense defensive anchor. In 2001, the Nets traded Stephon Marbury for Jason Kidd, which totally revolutionized New Jersey's offense. They went from like a traditional half-court system to a fast-break, pace-and-space team. Sure, the Nets flourished under the changes, going from one of the worst teams in the league to the NBA Finals in a single season. But the changes reduced Van Horn's minutes, shot attempts, and role on the team. So in the summer of 2002, the Nets traded Van Horn to the Sixers in exchange for Dikembe Mutombo. Keith Van Horn's time with the Sixers only lasted a year before he was on the move again. He spent just 47 games with the Knicks in 2003, 55 games with the Bucks in 2004 and 2005, and finally 82 games with Dallas in 2005 and 2006. It seemed like no matter where Van Horn landed, he couldn't find a home. Because of the constant moving that came with being traded over and over again, Van Horn decided to retire just 31 years old, realizing that his $88 million career earnings was plenty and his family was more important than trying to stay in the league. Pretty respectable if you ask me. Still, this begs the question, what would have happened if the Nets had selected Tracy McGrady at the #2 pick? With Tracy's slow development, it's likely that the Nets would have struggled tremendously during his first few seasons. But by 2001, when they made a run to the finals, McGrady could have been what they needed to battle Kobe and the Lakers. Regardless, it's hard to imagine Tracy alone would have had enough to help the Nets overcome one of the most dominant teams of the 21st century. Shaq at the time was just too much of a force. But this next prospect, on the other hand, took Kobe and Shaq out at the peak of their powers, which solidified him as an NBA legend.
Celtics select Chauncey Billups from the University of Colorado.
After bringing his hometown team, Colorado, to the big dance for the first time in over 3 decades, Chauncey Billups had turned himself into a premier NBA prospect, being picked by the Boston Celtics 3rd overall. But the problem was the Celtics had just hired a coach who didn't have patience to develop him, putting Chauncey in a terrible position right out of the gate and setting the stage for a disastrous rookie season. In various interviews, Coach Rick Pitino openly admitted he didn't know how to play Chauncey in his point guard heavy lineup, forcing him to play as an undersized shooting guard, a position that completely misutilized Chauncey's elite passing ability. Because of this, Pitino gave up on Billups just 5 games into his rookie season and traded Billups 50 games later. From there, he was sent to Toronto to play with the Raptors and a fellow rookie named Tracy McGrady, who we'll learn about later. But unfortunately, together the rookies continued to struggle, ending their season with a dismal record of 16-66. Because of this, Billups was traded in the offseason to his hometown Denver Nuggets, and then traded again a year later to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then one more time to the Detroit Pistons. For Chauncey, this was the lowest point in his basketball career. He had been in the league for 5 years and already played for 5 different teams. By all accounts, he was on the fast track to being considered a bust.
Came out, fell all the way off, and they talking bust and all of this, and truth of the matter is, at the time, I was a bust.
But luckily for Chauncey, he received some guidance from Minnesota point guard Terrell Brandon, who taught Billups how to play within an NBA offense. According to Billups, Brandon showed him that winning was the only thing that mattered. He helped him slow down his game and focus on making the right read at the time. With Brandon's mentoring, Chauncey rebuilt his game through hard work, becoming a player whose sole focus was helping his team win. And then suddenly, Billups transformed overnight.
Chauncey jumps it up, seems even worse. The shot clock to 5. Billups.
In 2002, Chauncey turned his new team, the Detroit Pistons, into must-see TV for the first time since the Bad Boys of the 1980s and 90s, helping them win over 50 games, earning themselves the first seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs, where, as fate would have it, they fell into a 3-1 hole in the first round against Tracy McGrady, forcing Billups to flex his clutch gene on the league's biggest stage. In the final game of the series, Billups dropped 37 and 40 points to eliminate the Magic and advance to the second round, earning Billups the official nickname Mr. Bigshot.
Stoudemire for the lead. Here's Chauncey Billups. Here it is.
And despite losing to the Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals, Billups had shown that he was capable of running an offense, locking down on defense, and leading an NBA team. In 2004, the Pistons, led by Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, Ben Wallace, and many more, shocked the world by beating the Lakers in the NBA Finals, with Chauncey Billups averaging 21 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds in 5 games, winning the Finals MVP.
The 2004 NBA Finals MVP, number 1, Chauncey Billups.
Now, Chauncey Billups is remembered as one of the most well-rounded point guards of his generation, earning 5 All-Star nods, 3 All-NBA teams, and enough to make him a 2024 inductee to the Basketball Hall of Fame. Today, Chauncey is still involved in the NBA, acting as the head coach for the Portland Trail Blazers, where he can hopefully give Scoot Henderson some guidance that Terrell Brandon gave him all those years ago. But in regards to McGrady, it's hard to argue that the Celtics made the right choice drafting Chauncey 3rd overall, especially since they traded Billups just 51 games into his career there. Maybe with T-Mac, they could have been more patient. And who knows how great the Celtics could have been playing with T-Mac and Paul Pierce in the front court. But now we have to get into the portion of the draft where the names of the players start to become a little bit less recognizable. Starting with a prospect most casual fans probably never heard of, Bowling Green legend Antonio Daniels.
1997 NBA Draft, the Vancouver Grizzlies select Antonio Daniels from Bowling Green University.
Antonio Daniels was an explosive point guard with a talent for driving to the hoop, scoring, and passing. In his senior season, he averaged 24 points, nearly 7 assists, 3 rebounds, and 2 steals per game, finishing top 5 in scoring and top 10 in assists. The Vancouver Grizzlies selected him 4th overall and were ecstatic to land such a dynamic player. But unfortunately, his game didn't really translate to the NBA the way he had hoped. In his rookie season, Daniels struggled, shooting just 43% effective field goal percentage, which is quite the drop from 59% just a year before. Lucky for Daniels, he was traded away from Vancouver into a much better franchise, the San Antonio Spurs, which set him up to play alongside the top pick in the 1997 draft class, Tim Duncan. Suddenly, Antonio Daniels found himself in an excellent position to succeed as a role player and help the team contend for a title, which is exactly what they accomplished in the 1999 season, helping the team win their first championship in franchise history. Daniels stayed with the team for 3 more seasons, becoming a smart, unselfish role player who Coach Popovich trusted to run the second unit. After that, Daniels bounced around the league for the next 8 years or so, playing in Seattle, Washington, New Orleans, and Philadelphia. Over his career, he averaged just 7 points per game and never scored more than 30 his entire career, far less than the lottery picks selected before and after him. But he was known as a pro's pro, a guy that coaches, players, and organizations loved because he put his ego aside and the team first. Unfortunately, Antonio Daniels didn't end up worthy of the 4th pick Vancouver spent on him back in 1997, and most people only remember him as the guy Allen Iverson crossed over.
3 points. Iverson, wow, what a fake on Daniels!
Because of all this, it's hard to wonder what could have happened if Vancouver had instead selected Tracy McGrady. With McGrady ascending to superstar status by 2001, is it possible the Grizzlies could have kept the franchise in Vancouver? And how would have Tracy's play affected the career of Pau Gasol? Would the addition of McGrady have stopped him from joining the Lakers later on? In an alternate future, it could have been Gasol and McGrady going head-to-head with Kobe and Shaq. But unfortunately, that's crazy what-ifs, and that reality never came to be. Instead, the Grizzlies floundered, moved cities, and struggled much of the early 2000s. As for Daniels, he retired in 2011 and became a color commentator for the Thunder. Now, he covers the New Orleans Pelicans, where he's become a fan favorite for some of his hilarious calls.
These are the guys that will tell NBA players they suck. Look at this. It's 20,000 people here. And they find the one guy in the gym who has never shot a basketball in his life.
With the 5th pick, the Denver Nuggets chose a player whose career had an eerily similar trajectory as the player we just covered.
The Denver Nuggets select Tony Battie from Texas Tech.
Texas Tech center Tony Battie. After ending his college career as the school's all-time block leader, averaging nearly 19 points and 12 rebounds his senior season, Tony looked like he had all the tools to be a cornerstone of an NBA franchise. Unfortunately, that didn't wind up being the case. Battie battled injuries early in his career. His offensive game didn't really translate to the NBA, and he fell into a more of a defensive role player than a franchise cornerstone. The Nuggets traded him to the Celtics, where Battie played for 6 seasons. He averaged nearly 7 points, 6 rebounds, and a block in that time, helping the Celtics reach the Eastern Conference Finals in 2002. After that, Battie bounced around the league, playing for Cleveland, Orlando, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. In the end, Battie played an impressive 14 seasons, but never averaged more than 6 points and 1 block per game. And like Antonio Daniels, Battie wound up becoming an analyst after his official NBA retirement, working for the local Orlando Magic radio program. Next up is the 6th pick in the 1997 draft, Kentucky shooting guard Ron Mercer.
Celtics select Ron Mercer from the University of Kentucky.
Ron was the 2nd lottery pick chosen by the Celtics. But unlike Chauncey Billups, who was drafted before him and who struggled in the NBA for a number of years, Ron Mercer started his career off strong. In his rookie season, he averaged 15 points, nearly 4 rebounds, and 2 assists per game, earning himself a spot on the 1997 All-Rookie team. In his second season, he improved his scoring, assists, and rebounding. But unfortunately, Mercer's early ascension was cut short by the emergence of Paul Pierce. And so, just 2 years into his NBA career, Mercer was traded to the Nuggets, who traded him again just 30 games later. And unfortunately for Ron, his time with the Magic wound up being just as short-lived as his last 2 ventures, ending him in being moved to the Chicago Bulls, who were still struggling to find themselves after losing Michael Jordan. And though Mercer had the best year of his career with the Bulls, averaging 19 points on a career-high 41 minutes per game, he was moved again just a year later to the Indiana Pacers, where his career slowly fizzled out for the next 4 years. Meanwhile, his former teammate Chauncey Billups and draft mates Tim Duncan and T-Mac, they were just getting started. In the end, Ron Mercer played 8 years in the league for 7 different teams, never finding his way into the starting rotation for more than a few games. He became known as a high-volume but inefficient scorer who never evolved with the NBA game and was out of the league by the age of 30. And so, again, it's undeniable that the Celtics made a mistake by passing on Tracy McGrady, a player they could have drafted not once, but twice.
The New Jersey Nets select Tim Thomas from Villanova University.
With the 7th pick, the New Jersey Nets selected Tim Thomas, who the Sixers immediately traded Keith Van Horn to acquire. Thomas was a 6'10" forward from Villanova. At his best, he could dribble, play the post, shoot the three, run the fast break, and throw down some thunderous dunks. At one point in his high school career, he was ranked above the Kobe Bryant. This guy looked amazing. So when the Sixers got him, he looked like the perfect complement to Allen Iverson. But in his rookie season, Thomas didn't mesh well with the team. For every smooth three or highlight dunk, Thomas would completely disappear for games at a time. So Coach Larry Brown traded him to the Bucks to surround Iverson with more defensive-minded veterans. In Milwaukee, Tim Thomas, Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, and Sam Cassell became the #1 offense in the entire league, with Thomas finishing runner-up for 6th Man of the Year in 2001. Over 385 games with the team, Thomas averaged a solid 12 points and 4 rebounds. But after Milwaukee, Thomas bounced around the league, helping 7 different teams with his scoring off the bench. Outside of that, there aren't many highlights in the NBA career of Tim Thomas. And now, Thomas is the head coach for a boys team at Paramus Catholic High School, where he's likely to tell stories of his playoff battles against Tracy McGrady, a battle that Thomas and the Bucks won in just 5 games. But that doesn't mean he should have been selected before Tracy McGrady, especially when you have hindsight. And finally, we had the last pick taken before Tracy McGrady, a player most casual fans have never even heard of, Golden State big man O'Donnell Foyle.
The Golden State Warriors select O'Donnell Foyle from Colgate University.
Foyle was a Caribbean-born basketball player who led Colgate College to their first 2 March Madness appearances ever. Foyle was an undersized center at 6'10", but an excellent rebounder with a talent for swatting away shots at the rim. He ranks 3rd all-time in blocks in NCAA history with 492. That is incredibly impressive. Foyle played 9 years for the Warriors and never averaged more than 6 points per game, and the Warriors only reached the postseason once in his tenure. But Foyle was an anchor in the paint and a hometown favorite. From 2006 to 2009, he struggled with injuries and just couldn't stay on the court consistently. He ended his career as the Golden State Warriors' all-time block leaders with 1,140 blocks. After retiring, Foyle became a political activist, starting a college outreach program called Democracy Matters. He was inducted into the World Sports Humanitarian Hall of Fame, making him one of only 8 NBA players with that distinction. Now, he serves as a community ambassador for the Golden State Warriors. Not the best NBA draft pick, but quite an impressive human being. This pick obviously would have been better suited on Tracy McGrady. In an alternate universe, McGrady could have been the veteran helping bridge the gap between Curry and Baron Davis, perhaps starting the Warriors dynasty a few years earlier, or maybe negating the dynasty altogether. Now, before we get to Tracy McGrady with the 9th overall pick, I told you that the 1997 draft class was extremely chaotic, and this player drafted in the 2nd round is a huge reason why.
More than matches and seizes the moment.
Drafted by the Phoenix Suns with the 43rd pick, Steven Jackson didn't play a single game for them. Instead, he spent his first 3 pro years bouncing around Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, and the CBA, trying to keep his NBA dreams alive. Most guys would have quit, but not Jackson. When he finally got a shot with the San Antonio Spurs in 2000, he made the most of it, proving he wasn't just a journeyman, but a legit NBA rotation player. By 2003, Jackson helped the Spurs win an NBA championship along with that #1 pick, Tim Duncan. But that was only the beginning of his wild ride. He moved on to the Pacers, where he became famous for something other than basketball, the infamous Malice at the Palace brawl in Detroit. He returned to the league, eventually becoming a 20-point-per-game night scorer with the Warriors and the Bobcats, known for his clutch shooting, toughness, and fearless trash talk. He even played a huge role on the 2007 Golden State We Believe Warriors, helping them upset the #1 seed Mavericks in one of the greatest playoff upsets ever. Throughout his career, Steven Jackson was never an all-star, but he was a champion, a leader, and a player who every teammate trusted when the game was on the line. And while he didn't have Tracy McGrady scoring titles or highlight reels, this guy was selected at the 43rd pick and carved out a place in NBA history with his swagger, resilience, and unfiltered authenticity. And now, it's time to talk about the career of the best pure scorer in the entire 1997 draft class. A player Kobe Bryant jealously said this about.
I think I told him one time, I said, bro, you could do everything I could do on the court,
but you were 6'10". Literally everything. I mean, he had no weaknesses, offensively or defensively, and he was a nightmare to guard.
The one and only Tracy McGrady. Raised by a single mother in Central Florida, McGrady's first love wasn't even basketball. As a kid, he dreamed of playing baseball. Basketball only entered his life after getting bullied, so he decided to try his luck on the court. And at first, no one even cared or knew who he was. He was unranked and unknown, until one weekend when he got an invite and everything changed. At the ABCD camp, he dominated future NBA players so thoroughly that the scouts instantly elevated him to the #1 high school prospect in the country. That performance made him a national sensation overnight. And despite being a risky pick straight out of high school, the Raptors took a chance on him with the #9 pick.
The Toronto Raptors select Tracy McGrady from Mount Zion Christian Academy.
But Tracy McGrady's rookie season didn't go as planned. The Raptors had no development system for young players, and McGrady spent most of the games watching from the bench, averaging just 7 points in 18 minutes per game. He later described this season as quote-unquote hell. Everything changed his second season when the Raptors drafted his cousin, Vince Carter.
The Golden State Warriors select Vince Carter from the University of North Carolina.
Together, T-Mac and Vince put Toronto on the map, turning Raptors into must-see TV and leading them to their first playoff appearance in franchise history. But after a few years, McGrady didn't want to be anyone's sidekick. He wanted to be the guy. So in the year 2000, he left Toronto for the Orlando Magic, signing a massive contract and landing a shoe deal with Adidas, cementing his place as a cultural icon. In Orlando, he was supposed to team up with Grant Hill to form one of the scariest duos in the NBA. But Hill's injuries left McGrady to carry the entire franchise alone. And T-Mac delivered. In his first season, he won Most Improved Player, averaging, get this, nearly 27 points per game. In the following year, in 2001-2002, he finished 4th in MVP voting, securing his second All-Star selection. In 2002 and 2003, he had one of the greatest scoring seasons ever, averaging 32.1 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 5.5 assists per game, while leading the league in PER, box plus or minus, and value over replacement player. Prime T-Mac was unstoppable. Pull-up threes, fadeaways, dunks over 7-footers, you name it. His 2000 season remains one of the greatest perimeter seasons ever, especially when you consider it was in an era with tight defense and no spacing. In 2004, he continued his offensive dominance with 28 points per game and dropped a career-high 62 on the Wizards. But despite his individual offensive brilliance, the Magic never made it out of the first round. In 2004, Tracy McGrady forced a trade to the Houston Rockets, hoping to finally win in the playoffs, teaming up with Yao Ming. So the Rockets arguably had the best inside-out duo in the entire NBA. And with Yao, McGrady didn't disappoint. In his first season with Houston, McGrady averaged nearly 26 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. That year, he delivered one of the most iconic NBA moments ever, scoring 13 points in 33 seconds against the San Antonio Spurs to steal an impossible win.
Here's McGrady for all over. McGrady foul is picked up. It's 4-point play. Houston, McGrady over Bowen for 3. McGrady for the win.
Even today, that performance feels unreal. The Rockets finished with a record of 51-31 and faced the Dallas Mavericks in the first round. McGrady averaged 30 points, 7.4 rebounds, and 6.7 assists in that series, including a dominant Game 2 where he dropped 34 points and threw down this legendary dunk over 7'6" Sean Bradley. But despite going up 2-0, the Rockets lost in 7 games, continuing McGrady's first-round playoff curse. The next season, back spasms and injuries began to plague him, and he played well in his 47 games, but unfortunately him and Yao were out, and the Rockets missed the playoffs entirely. In 2006 and 2007, McGrady bounced back playing 71 games and averaging nearly 25 points. He was named an All-Star starter again and finished 6th in the MVP voting. Again, Tracy McGrady balled out in the first round of the playoffs, going up 3-2 in the series against the Utah Jazz. But infamously, they lost in Game 7, with McGrady crying after the press conference, feeling like he had let his team down again.
I tried, man. I tried.
In 2007 and 2008, his scoring averages dipped, but Houston went on a 22-game win streak, the longest in franchise history at the time. However, injuries kept Yao out of the playoffs, and McGrady couldn't carry the team past the first round, losing to the Jazz again, despite averaging 27 points in that series. The following season, in 2008 and 2009, the wheels started coming off, and McGrady's knee injuries worsened. He played only 35 games and averaged a career-low 15.6 points and underwent microfracture surgery in February. After Houston, Tracy McGrady bounced around the league. He played with the New York Knicks in 2010, the Detroit Pistons in 2011, and the Atlanta Hawks in 2012. He later went on to China before retiring. Because of all his playoff failures, Tracy isn't really remembered as a winner, but instead for his impressive individual resume. McGrady is a 7-time All-Star, 2-time scoring leader, and had one of the greatest primes as a scorer in all of NBA history. Just listen to these former greats talk about trying to guard him.
11 back, so it's all the way back here. And I'm like, God. I would watch, I was like, damn.
T-Mac was all 5. Listen, he was shimmying Kobe and
had all the skills and all the athleticism, but he was 6'9".
Today, Tracy McGrady is still beloved by fans worldwide and often seen as one of the most overlooked talents in NBA history. And outside of Tim Duncan and perhaps Chauncey Billups, it's hard to argue that anyone has had a career close to as epic as his in the 1997 NBA draft. And for sure, not one person will ever come close to repeating his 13 points.
Here's McGrady all over. McGrady foul is picked up. It's 4-point play. Houston, McGrady over Bowen for 3. McGrady for the win. What?
If you enjoyed these longer videos, please let me know by subscribing and ticking on the notification bell. I'm working on the victims of Michael Jordan, and it's going to be epic, and I don't want you to miss it. So tick on that notification bell. Either way, I hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.